Very good morning, students. So, few days back, that is on, I hope, Saturday, we discussed about Coulomb's inverse square law and its applications. So, we derived many formulas by considering two balls connected to a string and everything. Now, actually, the Coulomb's inverse square law will be used only for the point charges. Only for the point charges, the Coulomb's inverse square law will be used to find either force of attraction or force of repulsion between any two charges. Whereas, if the charge is not a point charge, if the charge is distributed uniformly, if the charge is distributed uniformly in the sense, so for example, this is I'm considering one metal rod or something else. Now the charge is distributed uniformly like that. The entire charge Q is distributed like this. That is nothing but the charge is not concentrated at any particular point. The charge capital Q or small q is not concentrated at any particular point. Whatever the charge we gave to this metal rod or this body, the charge is distributed entire body, equally in entire body. In such a scenario, in such a case, how to find the force experienced by this charge on some other charge? That we call it as a continuous distribution of the charge. Previously in Coulomb's inverse square law, we considered two charges. Those two charges are fixed at particular location. Those two charges are fixed at a particular location. Whereas here, this charge is not fixed at a particular location. This charge is distributed uniformly. That we call it as the uniform distribution of the charge. In case of uniform distribution of the charge, first we'll go with linear charge density. We'll take the help of this parameter. Linear charge density. It is denoted with the symbol lambda. Linear charge density. Linear charge density is nothing but the charge per unit length is called as a linear charge density. So charge per unit length, its unit is Coulomb per meter. Its unit is Coulomb per meter. And its dimensional formula. The dimensional formula for Coulomb is AT. The dimensional formula for meter represents length. So ATL minus 1 is the dimensional formula of linear charge density. We'll take the help of the concept linear charge density. Linear charge density in case of one-dimensional structures. In case of one-dimensional structures or one-dimensional body. One-dimensional body, andre, for example, you take a wire. This is the wire, which is a one-dimensional shape. That wire might be along x-axis or might be along y-axis or might be along z-axis. So it is a one-dimensional structure or one-dimensional body. In case of one-dimensional shaped bodies, we'll take the help of this linear charge density. Whereas second parameter is surface charge density. Surface charge density. Surface charge density. This concept will be used in case of two-dimensional shaped bodies. Two-dimensional shaped body, andre, two-dimensional shaped body is nothing but you take one plane sheet. You take one cardboard. So these are all two-dimensional structured bodies. There, in case of two-dimensional structured bodies or two-dimensional shaped bodies, we'll take the help of a surface charge density. Later we'll apply all those. It is denoted with the symbol sigma. Sigma is nothing but the surface charge density. It is called as the charge per unit area. Sigma is equal to Q by A, charge per unit area, where charge unit is Coulomb, area unit is per meter square. Coulomb per meter square is the unit of surface charge density. Its dimensional formula is AT L to the power of -2 is the dimensional formula of surface charge density. Next case, in case of a three-dimensional structure, we'll go with the volume charge density. Volume charge density. Three-dimensional structure, it might be a sphere and such cases. We'll go with a volume charge density. It is denoted with the symbol rho. The charge per unit volume, is called as a volume charge density. Its unit is Coulomb per meter cube. Its unit is Coulomb per meter cube. Its dimensional formula is AT L to the power of -3. AT L to the power of -3. So whenever we are dealing with the continuous distribution of the charge, that is nothing but the given charge is not located at any particular point, then we cannot make use of this Coulomb's inverse square law. Why? Because this Coulomb's inverse square law will be used for the point charges, and moreover those two charges are located at fixed points. Whereas here this charge Q is not located at any fixed point, it is distributed uniformly. In such a case, we'll take the help of either one of these three based on the shape of the body, In case of one-dimensional shaped body called wire like that, we'll go with a linear charge density. It is denoted with the symbol sigma. Charge per unit length, its unit is Coulomb per meter, and its dimensional formula is AT L power -1. Next, we'll go with the surface charge density. It is denoted with the symbol sigma. Q by A, charge per unit area, Coulomb per meter square, ATL -2. And next, volume charge density, Coulomb per unit volume, charge per unit volume. Its unit is Coulomb per meter cube, ATL to the power of -3. Surface charge density will be used in case of two-dimensional shaped bodies like metal sheet and all. Volume charge density will be used in case of three-dimensional shaped bodies called as charged sphere in such cases. Now, we'll apply one thing. One of this will apply now. Here, I am considering a glass rod. I'm considering a glass rod. Not glass rod or metal rod, anything, no problem. It is charged with the capital Q. But that capital Q is not situated or located at any particular point here. That charge Q is uniformly distributed. The length of the rod is L. The length of the rod is L. It is having a charge Q. Now, I am placing a charge small q, which is at a distance of R or D, what or not you can take, R from one end of the metal rod. The charge Q is placed at a distance of R from one end of the rod. One end of the rod. So that implies that here, because of this entire charge Q, how much force will act on this small q? How much force will act on this small q? Blindly, we cannot apply a Coulomb's inverse square law here. As I discussed earlier, the Coulomb's inverse square law will be used to find the force between those two charges, any two charges, if those two charges are located at the fixed points. But here, we don't know where this charge Q is located. We don't know where the charge Q is at a distance of small q. Because once you know the distance, then only we can apply the Coulomb's inverse square law. In such a case, we'll go with the different scenario here. So, here instead of taking the entire charge, I am taking one small element. This is one small element I am considering, element of thickness dx. This rod is having a length L and having a charge Q. In that, I am considering one small element now. Small element. The thickness of that element is dx. The thickness of that element is dx. This is dx. And this element having a charge dq. This element having a charge dq, and this element is at a distance of x from the charge small q. Now what I'm going to do is, because of this dq, how much force will act? Because we know where exactly the dq is located, which is at a distance x. We know exactly where this dq is located. Then easily we can find the force between dq and small q, because we know this distance. Then that force will not be the total force. That force will not be the total force. Again, what I have to do, I will take one more small element. Because of this element, how much force? I will take one more small element. Because of this element, what is the force? I will take one more small element. Because of this, what is the force? Like that, I will find the forces. Then after adding all these forces, we'll get the net force. Adding in the sense here, we need to approach integrational method. So here, what is the force experienced by this dq on q? So as we know, the formula to find out force, F is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught. Here Q1 is Q, Q2 is dq divided by square of the distance between these two, which is equal to x square. Because of the small charge, it will experience the small force. That's why instead of F, I will go with the dF. Here we don't know the value of dq. We don't know the value of dq. First we have to find the value of dq. How to find the value of dq? Now here, this entire rod having a length L, having a charge Q. So then what is the charge per unit length now? Charge per unit length. Charge per unit length. The total rod having a length L, charge Q. The total rod of length L having a charge Q. Then what is the charge per unit length now? Charge per unit length is equal to Q by L, which is equal to lambda we can call. The total rod having a length L, total rod having a length L, charge Q. Then what is the charge per unit length? Q by L. But here whatever the segment I consider, that segment is having a length dx. This segment having a length dx. Then what will be the value of dq now? dq is equal to charge per unit length is ql into the distance is dx. So this much amount of the charge this segment is having now. Then I will write df is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught small q into dq is nothing but q by L into dx. Q by L into dx divided by x square. Divided by x square. So this small segment will experience this much of force on small q. Like if you take one more element and you take one more element, then the total force acting on small q is equal to, total force acting on this is equal to integral of df. Integral of df. From where to where I need to integrate? From where to where I need to integrate? I am integrating the segments from here to here. I am taking the segment from here to here. If you take the first segment is at a distance of r from the charge. If I take the last segment is having a distance of r plus L from this. So I am integrating all the segments. From where to where I am integrating? I am integrating from r to r plus L. I am integrating all the segments from here to here, which is equal to integral of r plus L 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q into q by L by x square dx. Now, so here 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught is a constant. Very good. 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught is constant. So I will bring out of the integration, because whatever the segment you take, this value remains constant. Whatever the segment you take, is segment here or here or here or here, whatever the segment you take, this q value remains constant. So that q also I am bringing out of the integration. And here q by L also I am bringing out of the integration. Then what is the variable here? X value is the variable. Because if you take the segment to segment, this x value will vary. X value will change. So integral of 1 by x square dx. From where to where? From r to r plus L. Now, I hope you know what is an integral of 1 by x square dx. 1 by x square dx integration minus 1 by x. So this will be 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q by L. So 1 by x square dx integration minus 1 by x. From where to where? From R to R plus L. First I have to substitute the upper limit, then after lower limit, which is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught small q into capital Q by L. First upper limit minus lower limit. Here minus is there. That's why I will write 1 by R minus 1 by R plus L. 1 by R minus 1 by R plus L. Because of here minus ra. Actually first to upper limit, next lower limit. Because of minus we'll get opposite. Now if you take an LCM, R plus L minus R, 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q by L, R plus L minus R divided by R into R plus L. Then here plus R minus R get cancels. In the numerator we have L. That L and L will also get cancels. Finally, the equation for the force is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught small q into capital Q by R into R plus L. Already such type of derivations we derived in first year called gravitation and work per energy also we derived this by using integrational methods. Work energy theorem by variable force we followed the same procedure. Next one. No doubt. A charge capital Q is divided into two pieces. Is divided into two pieces or two parts. Full stop. To experience the maximum force, between those two pieces, to experience a maximum force between those two pieces, the magnitude of the charge of each piece will be, the magnitude of the charge of each piece will be, the magnitude of the charge of each piece will be, the magnitude of the charge of each piece will be. Now, I am considering a charge capital Q. I am considering a charge capital Q. That capital Q is divided into two pieces. So one piece having a charge Q, then definitely other piece will have a charge Q minus Q. This charge Q is divided into two pieces now. Now these two pieces are separated by a certain distance. In order to experience the maximum force between them, what should be the value of this and this? For example, if this is the Q1 and this is the Q2, what is the value of Q1 and what is the value of Q2? In order to experience the maximum force when they are separated by a certain constant distance. Then whenever two charges are separated by a certain distance, obviously there will be electrostatic force. Here the medium is constant. Otherwise I will write one more. 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 Q2 by R square. Here what is asking is to experience the maximum force, what should be the value of Q1 and what should be the value of Q2. There is nothing but Q1, Q2 values are not fixed here. We don't know how much Q1 value, we don't know how much Q2 value. Whereas we know that the distance is constant. We know that the medium is constant. So F is directly proportional to Q1 and Q2. If the product of Q1 and Q2 is maximum, the force is maximum. If the product of Q1 and Q2 is minimum, the force is minimum. Okay. So F is directly proportional to Q1 is Q, Q2 is Q minus Q. Okay, now. So for example, here we need to go with the differentiation, later we'll discuss. For example, the total charge Q is equal to 6. For example, what I take 6 coulomb to understand the concept, 6 coulomb. For example, if Q1 is equal to 1, Q2 will be 5. If I divide into two pieces, then what is the product of these two? What is the product of these two? If Q1 is equal to 1 and Q2 is equal to 5, the product of these two is 5. 1 into 5, 5. If this is 2 and this is 4, so it will be 8. If this is 3 and this is also 3, we'll get it as a 9. If this is 4, again this will be 2, same thing we'll get 8. If this is 5, this will be 1, 5. So here the product is maximum. If the product is maximum, if the charge is divided into two equal parts, if 6 is divided into 3 and 3, we'll get the maximum force. So in the same manner, to experience the maximum force, the value of Q1 and Q2 must be equal, and which should be equal to Q by 2. To experience the force is maximum, Q1 is equal to Q2, which is equal to Q by 2. And if the given charge is divided into two equal parts, then only it will experience the maximum force based on this general procedure. The minimum force illappa. If minimum force here we will get a minimum force. And for example, what should be the value of Q1 and Q2? If Q1 is equal to 1, Q2 will be Q minus 1. Then only will experience the minimum force. This is general procedure. But scientifically, the condition for the maximum force is dF by dQ is equal to 0. dF by dQ is equal to 0. That is the condition for the maximum force. You are going to learn, I hope you learned, or you are going to learn, I don't know, but it is in maxima and minima in mathematics. dF by dQ is equal to 0. That is nothing but d by dQ of Q into Q minus Q is equal to 0. I hope you are very familiar with the differentiation. D by dQ of QQ minus Q square is equal to 0. Now you do the differentiation with respect to small q. So here this is the capital Q is there. So Q into dQ by dQ, capital Q is a constant, minus d by dQ of Q square is equal to 0. dQ by dQ is equal to 1. Then you are going to have Q minus d by dx of x square, d by dx of x square, n into x to the power of n minus 1 formula. So we are going to get a 2x. So 2q is equal to 0. From here, q is equal to 2q. From here, small q is equal to q by 2. Small q is equal to q by 2. The same thing we got, because we consider q1 is equal to q, which we got q by 2. So the q2 will be capital Q minus small q, which is also will get q by 2. So this is a mathematical procedure. In general procedure, like this also you can get the answer. So these are the concepts we need to study in case of electric charges. Now electric field. Next topic in this first chapter, electric field. Whenever electric field, whenever a charge is at rest, it will produces the electric field. Whenever the charge is at rest, it will produce us an electric field. The electric field produced by the charge when it is at rest is called as electrostatic field. Electrostatic, static is nothing but rest. Electrostatic field, or simply we can call it as an electric field. So electrostatics is the name of the chapter. Electrostatics is nothing but, in that chapter we are going to analyze the electric field produced by the charge when it is at rest. When it is at rest, that is called as an electrostatic field. Whenever the charge is in motion, that too uniform motion. Whenever the charge is in motion, that too uniform motion, it will produce electric field and magnetic field also. Whenever the charge is in motion, it will produce an electric field as well as magnetic field. The electric field produced by the charge when it is in motion is called as a dynamic electric field. That is nothing but electric current. We are going to discuss in the coming chapters. The electric field produced by the charge when it is in motion is called it, it will produce as a magnetic field also. Whereas the same charge is in motion, but this time the motion is accelerated motion. Accelerated motion. That is, whenever a charge is moving with a certain acceleration, whenever a charge is moving with certain acceleration, it will produce electric field, magnetic field also it will produce. But along with electric and magnetic fields, it will radiate energy also. It gives energy also. Whenever a charged particle is moving with certain acceleration, it will produce electric field and magnetic field, and as well as it radiates energy. Based on this concept only, we are going to analyze the electromagnetic wave. Okay. So whenever the charge is at rest, it will produce only electric field. Whenever the charge is in motion, that is uniform motion, it will produce both electric and magnetic fields. Whenever the charge is in accelerated motion, it will produce electric field, magnetic field, and as well as it radiates energy. Now, in this chapter, we are going to analyze, we are going to study the electric field produced by the charge when it is at rest. And coming chapters, these topics we are going to study. Now, electric field or electrostatic field. Electric field or electrostatic field. Okay. So tomorrow we'll discuss about electric field produced by the charge when it is at rest. New chapter. Thank you.